Okay, so the topic of the day is factoring quadratic polynomials in the form ax squared plus bx plus c, where a is some number other than 1. And it's similar to doing them like we did a couple days ago, where we just started with x squared and the a was 1, but it's a little bit more complicated. And again, factoring a quadratic polynomial is like unfoil. So you're trying to figure out what would FOIL into this trinomial. However, because the coefficient of x squared is not 1, unfoiling is not as easy. So I've got an example here that we're going to start with. And that is 5x squared plus 3x minus 2. All right? I know that out of my binomials, the way I get the 5x squared is from my firsts. And the only things that multiply to 5x squared is 5x and x. Okay? So I know I'm going to start with 5x and x. But here's something that makes this a little bit more complicated. No longer can I use the rule of what multiplies to negative 2 and adds to 3, because this number in the middle comes from the outers plus the inners, and when you look at the binomials, the outers and the inners are going to also include a 5. So the first thing I want to do is I want to figure out what would multiply to the negative 2, because that's still going to go here, whatever multiplies to negative 2. So I have 2 and negative 1 and 1 and negative 2. All right, those are my options. Those numbers have to go here and here, but I don't know which ones and I don't know where. All right? And so what I've got to do essentially is guess and check. So in other words, I'm just going to put them somewhere and I'm going to see if it works. So when I do this, it's kind of convenient for me if I have a pencil and eraser, because if I mess up, I want to fix this. So here's what I'm starting with. I'm starting with 5x and x. And these are the numbers that go in here for the last, but I don't know which ones and I don't know where. So I might try this. How about a minus 1 here and a plus 2 here? And then when I calculate my inners, I've got negative 1x. My outers are 10x. That gives me positive 9x, which is not 3x. So this isn't going to work. All right? So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to erase this, and I'm going to try again. Now, what I can do is just switch them, or I can try something completely different. So how about this? How about I'll put plus 2 here, and I'm going to put minus 1 here. And then if I look at my inners and my outers, I've got plus 2x for my inners, minus 5x for my outers, and that adds to negative 3x. Now that's interesting, because what I need is a positive 3. If I've got the right number but the wrong sign for my inners and outers, this is simple. All I'm going to do is change my signs. So I'm going to put in a minus here and a plus here. Now in the middle I have minus 2x. On the outers I have positive 5x. That gives me positive 3x in the middle. So this takes a little bit of trial and error, or I like to call it guess and check, in order to accomplish. So let's go to the next one. So the first thing I want to do when I'm looking at one of these is figure out what I have to start with. Now, when I start with the 3x squared, the only way I can get 3x squared is 3x and x. So here's what I'm going to have. 3x and x. Now, I need things that multiply to positive 7. And that's going to be 1 and 7. I don't know which one goes where. And I don't know, well, let's try. Let's see what we can do. How about this? Plus 7 plus 1. So my inners are 7x, my outers are 3x, that gives me 10x, I need 22x in the middle. So that's not going to work. So let's do this. Let's switch them around. So I'll put plus 1 here and plus 7 here. Now my inners are 1x and my outers 21x. That gives me 22x. So I have the right factorization. And that is what we call it. It's a factorization. So if you don't have a lot of options for what multiplies to your firsts, because we only had one option, 3x and x, and you don't have a lot of options for what multiplies to your last, which we don't because we have 1 and 7, then the guess and check is pretty easy. So let's do another guess and check. All right? So here's what we have. 2x squared minus 7x minus 15. The only way to get 2x squared for your firsts is 2x and x. So I know I'm going to start with 2x and x. Now, I need to figure out what multiplies to negative 15, and there are going to be more options for this. So let me write my list here. I've got negative 1 times 15 and 1 times negative 15. I've got negative 3 times 5 and 3 times negative 5. And I don't know which pair is the correct pair, and I don't know which one goes where. So I'm going to have to try some things. Sometimes I try and do it a little bit in my head and see if I can get kind of close to this. So let's look at this. I'm thinking it won't be 1 in 15, because it's going to be kind of hard to get to 7 in the middle, because I'm either going to multiply the 2 by 15 and get 30, or I'm going to multiply 1 by 15 and get 15, and I'm not going to get close to 7. So I'm going to start with the negative 3 and 5 and the 5 and negative 3. And let's put something in. So negative 3, positive 5. We'll just try that. In the middle, I get negative 3x. In the outers, I get positive 10x. That gives me positive 7x. That's just the wrong sign. So all I have to do is switch my signs, because I've got the right number. I just need the opposite signs. So now let me try this. Inners is 3x, outers is negative 10x. That gives me negative 7x. So I have factored this one. All right, let's go to another example. All right, with this one, the only way to get 3x squared is to start with 3x and x. All right, let's see. How can I get 6? But here's what's interesting. I need to get a positive 6, but my inners and outers are going to have to add up to a negative. So guess what? My two numbers are going to both be negative. That way I'll add to negatives in the middle, and I'll still get a positive for my last. So I've got negative 1 times negative 6, or I'm going to have negative 2 times negative 3. So that's all I have to guess from. So this is a little bit easier. So how about this? Let's do this. Negative 2, negative 3. So negative 2x in the middle, negative 9x on the outside. That gives me negative 11x. So that's not it. Let's try this again. How about let's do this. Let's put a 6 here and a 1 here and see what we get. How about negative 6x in the middle, negative 3x on the outside. This does add up to negative 9x, so this is the correct factorization. All right, let's go to the next one. I've got 7x squared plus 2x minus 5. And again, the only way I can get 7x squared is from 7x and x. So this is going to be easy to start. And I need things that multiply to negative 5. So negative 1 and 5, or 1 and negative 5. And in the middle, I need to add up to 2. Well, that probably means I don't want to put a 5 here, because then the 5 is going to multiply by a 7 and give me 35, and it's going to get hard to get close to a 2. So my guess is that this is going to be a 1, and this will be a 5. And if I want my inners and outers to add to positive 2, I probably want this 7x to be the positive one, so I'm going to put a plus here and a minus here. My inners are negative 5x, my outers are positive 7x, that gives me positive 2x. Now, let me show you what happens when they're not so easy. With this particular example, I'm starting with 6x squared. Well, that means I can either start with 6x and x, or 2x and 3x. So that's a lot of options for us. 2 sets of options means we have to try everything twice. For my last, I've got negative 24. So that's negative 1 and 24, or 1 and negative 24. Negative 2 and 12, or 2 and negative 12. Negative 3 and 8, or 3 and negative 8. Negative 4 and 6, or 4 and negative 6. That's 8 options times these 2 options, which is 16. Then multiply that by 2 again, because it could either be this one first or this one first. So that's 32 options to guess and check. That's a lot of options, and it can take a while to figure it out using guess and check. So I do have one other way to show you that you can do these that will get you the answer without guess and checking 32 options. So it's always going to be your preference which method you want to use. We did go over this in Algebra 1, so it should look familiar to you. And that is this, the box method. And remember, what we do is we start out with a box that we cut into 4 boxes. And in our very first box, we're going to put this number, the 6. This goes in our very first box. Our negative 24, and make sure you take the sign with it, goes in this box. Okay? That's how we're going to start. Then we're going to multiply the 6 and the negative 24. And when we do that, we get negative 144. And so here's now my new strategy. I need to put some numbers here that also multiply to negative 144, and they add to 7. So now it's like the ones that just started with x squared, except I sometimes got some bigger numbers to work with. So I need 2 numbers that multiply to negative 144 that add to 7. And I'll show you how you can figure that out if you don't know how to. But in this case, 16 and negative 9 are the numbers that work. So here's what happens. We put 16 and negative 9 in the other 2 boxes, and it doesn't matter which one we put where. All right? As long as you put 16 in one of these 2 and negative 9 in the other, because together they multiply to negative 144 and they add to 7. Here's your very first step. Look at your first column. What is the greatest common factor? Put that number right here. Okay, so here our greatest common factor is 3, and we're going to put that number there. Now, the rest of this is multiplication. So here's my next box. And what I want to do is start with this number, and I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to say, what do I need to multiply 3 by to get 6? The answer to that is 2. 3 times 2 gives me 6. So I'm going to put a 2 here. What do I need to multiply by here to get to a negative 9? So that these 2 numbers multiply to a negative 9. So that's negative 3. I want this number and this number here to multiply to 16. So that's going to be 2 and 8. Now, the numbers that you have outside of your box give you a clue as to what your factors are. Since you have a 3 and an 8, your first factor is 3x plus 8. Since you have a 2 and a negative 3, you have 2x minus 3. And that's using the box method. So let's go ahead and try another example using the box method. All right, so we've got 6x squared minus x minus 12. So remember, the 6 goes here, the negative 12 goes here. We multiply those, and we're going to get negative 72. So I need two numbers that multiply to negative 72 and add to negative 1. All right? That's what I'm looking for. Now I know that 8 and 9 multiply to 72, and if I want those to add to negative 1, I'm going to make the 8 positive and the 9 negative. So 8 times negative 9 is negative 72, 8 plus negative 9 is negative 1. So put an 8 somewhere, put the negative 9 somewhere. All right? Now, in this row, ask yourself, what's the greatest common factor? And that is 2. So a 2 goes here. Now I need to put a number here. 2 times what gives me 6? That's 3. 2 times what gives me 8? That's 4. 3 times what gives me negative 9? That's negative 3. The 2 and the negative 3 mean 2x minus 3. The 3 and the 4, 3x plus 4. And always, you can check and make sure you've done this correctly simply by foiling your two factors and seeing if you get the trinomial that you started with. All right, let's do another example. So here I've got 10x squared plus 3x minus 4. The 10 goes here. The negative 4 goes here. All right? Multiply them together and I get negative 40. I need two numbers that multiply to negative 40 and add to my middle number, which is 3. All right? So I need two numbers that multiply to negative 40 and add to 3. And off the top of my head, I don't think I know what this is. So let's go ahead and start making a list of what multiplies to negative 40. And remember, if I want them to add up to be a positive, the smaller one is negative. So negative 1 and 40, so that's not going to add to 3. Negative 2 and 20 doesn't add to 3. Negative 3 doesn't work. Negative 4 and 10, that adds to 6. Negative 5 and 8, that adds to 3. All right? So now I have my two numbers. Put them in here. In either position, it doesn't matter. Go to your first column. What is your greatest common factor? That is 5. Now you see here I've got a negative. When you're finding this greatest common factor, always pull out a positive. Don't ever pull out a negative. So I'm going to put a 5 here. 5 times what gives me 10? That's 2. 5 times what gives me negative 5? That's negative 1. And 2 times what gives me 8? That's 4. So my factors, the 5 and the 4, mean 5x plus 4. The 2 and the negative 1 mean 2x minus 1. Let's do another example. This one has some big numbers. So first of all, I've got 24x squared. Can you imagine trying to do guess and check on this? That would be terrible. So I'm going to put 24 here. It ends with plus 20, so the 20 goes here. I'm going to multiply those, and I get 480. My middle number is negative 47, so I need to find two numbers that multiply to 480 and add to negative 47. Well, if they have to add to a negative, then they're both going to have to be negative because they've got to multiply to a positive.
True.
So negative 1 and negative 480 clearly doesn't add to negative 47. So let's keep going. I've got 2, negative 2, and negative 240. I've got negative 3 and negative 160. I've got negative 4 and negative 120. How about negative 5 and negative 96? How about negative 6? So negative 6 and negative 80. We're getting closer. 4 to 80, does it divide by 7? Does not. So I've got negative 8 and negative 60. We're getting closer. Let's try 9. 9 doesn't work. So I've got negative 10 and negative 48. Getting even closer. All right, how about 11? So 480, does it divide by 11? Nope. 480 divided by 12 gives us 40. So negative 12 and negative 40. So we're up to negative 52. We're very close. So take 480. Does it divide by 13? No. Didn't divide by 7, so it's not going to divide by 14. Let's try 15. I've got negative 15 and negative 32. And this adds to negative 47. So these are the two numbers we're going to put in. Negative 15 and negative 32. My greatest common factor in my first column is 3. 3 times 8 gives me 24. 3 times negative 5 gives me negative 15. And 8 times negative 4 gives me negative 32. The 3 and the negative 4 give me 3x minus 4. The 8 and the negative 5 give me 8x minus 5. One last example for us to try at the bottom of the page. 4x squared minus 16x minus 9. So I'm going to put in my 4 and my negative 9. It multiplies to negative 36. So I need two numbers that multiply to negative 36 and add to my middle numbers negative 16. I think this could be an 18 and a 2. So how about a negative 18 and 2? Let's put those numbers in. My greatest common factor here is 2. 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 1 is 2. And 2 times negative 9 gives me negative 18. The 2 in the negative 9 is 2x minus 9. The 2 in the 1 is 2x plus 1.